1 John 4:8 says, God is love. He is love. I never met anyone that was entirely anything. Like, I've met people who love, I met people who are mean, I met people who are sad, but not entirely love, not entirely mean or entirely sad. God is entirely love.
Amen.
But what about God's wrath? How can God be entirely love, but also have wrath? Let me explain. This answer stems from his attribute of unity. The unity of God means that God is not divided into parts, yet we see different attributes of God emphasized at different times of the Bible and in our life. We shouldn't think of God being a collection of attributes that make up one, nor should we think of various attributes being external with God in the middle. Rather, God is entirely everything. Everything. His whole being includes all of his attributes. He's entirely loving, he's entirely merciful, entirely just, entirely wrath, and so forth. But how can he be entirely wrath and entirely love at the same time? They're completely opposite attributes. I believe a lot of questions about God can be answered in the three short words I'm going to use now. It's because he's God. That's it. It's plain and simple. He's God, and that's just how he is. Just because we can't understand, or just because it doesn't make sense to us in our little finite minds that were created by an infinite God, it shouldn't discourage us, it shouldn't weaken us in faith, and it doesn't mean that what we're being taught isn't true. I mean, we're talking about God. Eternal, almighty, all-knowing, all-sufficient, omnipresent, creator of everything, God. Are we really to think our little peanut brains are going to understand everything about him? It's just not going to happen. And we shouldn't think of God being any more one thing than the other. We shouldn't think of God being wrath and justice in the Old Testament and peace and love in the New Testament. He is entirely all the time. Jesus Christ, God, is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Malachi 3:6 says, "For I, the Lord, do not change." But people criticize God so much for being angry, punishing, clenched fist type of God in the Old Testament, and a peaceful, loving, kind type of God in the New Testament. God the Father in the Old Testament is a mean, angry God, and God the Son, Jesus, well, he's cool. He's nice. He's compassionate. No, they are one God, three persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the Trinity. Another truth that we can't understand, it's beyond our understanding. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I'm in him, and he's in me. One God, same God. The God of the Old Testament is the God of the New Testament, and he didn't change. Yeah. On a side note, for those that think God was wrath in the Old Testament and love in the New Testament, the wrath of God the Father was never put more on display than in the New Testament when he poured it out on Christ. Also, the love of God the Father was never put more on display than in the New Testament when he poured out his wrath on Christ. Think about it. God's love and God's wrath met at the cross entirely.